All right, we are digging for wisdom yet again. That's my man Dixie over there. Y'all know who he is. Stop playing with him. So Wizord here. Hey, before we get too far into it, and it's on my mind, I'm going to give a shout out to Capel's Jordan Stafford's dad, who has now talked to me twice in the last 2 years, telling me that he's an avid viewer of this podcast. If you're watching again, even though your boys got knocked out, they did play valiantly. Thank you for your loyal viewership. You're my guy. Always has a big smile on his face when he tells me. Never tells me his first name, but he tells me about his son all the time. So that's good to know. He knows mine. How can he possibly know my name? Oh wait,
I feel like we're now a small market broadcast where you can just email us for shout outs. What's up with this, Wizzy? Email ward@wearegameday.com for all of your shout outs. You can just talk to him. He'll give you a shout out. That's all you got to do.
That's true. It's not an email. That's the effort is to actually come up to me. If you come up to me and say something, and I can actually remember 2 days later, then I'll say something on here. But anyway, we're in round 4. They call that the regional final.
I guess we'll retweet your highlights too. That's the kind of guys we are. We will retweet highlights if you tag us.
Retweet them. You got to throw us a tag so we know what's going on. What did you think about Region 3 after Thanksgiving football? And we didn't do anything crazy like they did in Houston, where they played a game at 10 in the morning the day after Thanksgiving when they're still tripping over their tryptophan and not even know where they are. They have to get up at 6 and go play some foosball. But tell me about the game. I mean, we were at 2 games together. One of them was just fantastic. Crazy, 101 points, but the defense was the name of the game in that Lovejoy-Anna game. A lot of crazy pick sixes and picks and all sorts of stuff. But your thoughts on the regional semifinals before we get into the regional final week?
You know, one thing, you talked about defense. You wouldn't really highlight defense on a 52-49 game just numerically, but there was some hard hitting going on. Tackling is what I really noticed in that game. I mean, there were several plays on both sides where really solid tackling kept a fourth down from happening. I mean, you see some games, Ward, I know you hate bad defense, where it's like, you can't tackle these players. You're getting 8 to 10 extra yards, but there are so many sure tackles that stop plays, and the ending was a really good tackle as we slowed down the highlights and figured out that Zayandra was probably inbounds because of good tackling. So that game, again, I just go back to the defense. I thought the defense got better from the first time they played, where they're just making mistakes left and right. And Ward, we talked about the turnovers. You can't be doing it both sides. And I think that's why I can't take Lovejoy when we get to that screen, is because you got to have a long passing game. You got to be able to be dynamic and work on both sides of the ball. And Lovejoy found a way to win that game, but I think we're going to see the end of the road. And then went down a little bit down the road to Prosper, and I think Argyle asserted their dominance against Prosper Walnut Grove. And the same thing with Denton Ryan. They asserted their dominance on Richland. And really, we always say it, Ward, there's levels to this. And now we're really starting to see the levels, and the teams with the D1 prospects and the teams with the big names are here. I think in D1 6A, it's just like all big names. There's no unusual suspects coming on here, which I actually don't like. But, there are some unusual suspects that we'll talk about, because, Ward, we're going to go all the way through bracketology today.
All the way. My man Dixie created a sweet bracket for us to look through. Dixie's a graphical genius, man. He'll throw an RKG graphic on you from out of nowhere. I don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, the top stories, we're going into regional week. We have a lot of Saturday games. I know why we do from the 6A point of view. Again, a lot of people in Houston are freaking out because the rain's coming in Friday. They want perfect situation. So while I'm putting together my Houston show, I have like one game in the area. Everybody else is like, I'm out of here. I got to go to some place where it doesn't rain. I was like, well, don't play high school football in Seattle. Then you'll never get a game in ever. But we're going to start for 6A Division 1. We're going to talk about the games all the way through 2A, and we're going to start going with the you know who and you know what we're talking about.
We're going to talk about Church Ball.
We're not going to talk about Church Ball. You don't want Church Ball
against Dallas Christian. We're going to break that down.
You don't want Church Ball, so we won't talk Church Ball. But that is happening this week, by the way.
Maybe one of the best TAPS players ever. Just like the Sawyer Anderson. We got some snubs over Christian. There.
Exactly. Dallas Christian, and then we got that Parish Episcopal Liberty Christian rematch in the final. But
We
we're going to
said it,
talk
Ward.
6A Division 1 first.
We
Elite
we
8.
we satisfied the
Is
broadcast
that it?
the advertisers. We said we talked about church ball.
Is that it? We gave him a
Back
25 seconds,
back
and
to the
that's a wrap.
regular thing.
All right. Well, I'll be seeing some church ball. But anyway, 6A Division 1. Take a look at it. We've got the bracket for you, the Elite 8 in each one of these classifications, and each one of these classifications and divisions. And you're seeing them from top to bottom. One of these 8 teams is going to win a state title. It's been Duncanville for the past couple of years. Who knows if it's going to be again, but I don't know a duo that's playing any better right now than Keelan Russell and Decorian Moore. We used to say it was Chris Jimerson and Quentin Gibson, but Capel shut that thing down real quick to the point where they only had one completion, and we always have a highlight from Quentin Gibson, and it was a throwing one this week because he actually threw a halfback option. But that worried me a little bit. Does it worry you at all with the Allen defense coming through against North Crowley that Jimerson could only complete 2 passes? He completed 2 more to the other team.
A little bit, but at the same time, for me, the one thing I just don't know, and it's just one of those things that's going to be that mystery, is how elite is Allen's defense. Because if you look at their schedule, now you start to really, again, we kind of talked about how there's levels to this. And Allen, other than Trinity, I think Trinity is probably the best offense that Allen has played, because Allen they only had 2 non-district games because of the fact that they are in a 9-team district. They didn't really get to test themselves like Duncanville and DeSoto and South Oak Cliff and some of these traditional powerhouses. Even North Crowley can say that they played somebody you can look at and go, okay, this is how it's going to match up. Allen, we don't know how high their ceiling is, and that is the key matchup in this game is Allen's defense good enough to slow down North Crowley's offense? And we don't have any data points, so we just kind of have to go on intuition and what we've seen. And I think what Coppell did was lay the blueprint. But now I have to ask myself, can Allen keep North Crowley to 21 points or lower? And I just don't think they can. I mean, I think that's kind of that hallmark that they have to get to, because Trinity got 22 or 21 on them. Allen got 22 on them. And so Trinity, a good above average elite offense, was able to get 3 touchdowns on Allen's good defense. Now we got North Crowley rolling in. Now we got dual threat. Now we got lots of weapons. I just don't think Allen has enough to stop them. And we saw last year that Allen played hard against North Crowley. They found some things in the footage and the coaching that challenged North Crowley, but they just didn't have the athletes to get it done. I think the same story, second verse, is what we're going to see this year in that game.
Yeah, it could be, because that Allen offense goes where Brady Bricker takes them, and some people may have thought that's what this is similar with Chris Jimerson, but North Crowley Coach Gates was like, no, sir, we're not even going to let Jimerson be a factor in the second half. Meet Cornelius Warren and try to bring him down. Maybe the same can be said about Micah Ellis. He hasn't had to do that, and I just can't see him putting up the same kind of numbers against the North Crowley team. You were talking about that Allen Trinity game, and I kind of agree with what you said in the tweet. You're not a big fan of chasing points, but at some point when you saw the way the thing was transpiring, you had to go for 2 at one point, and they'd still be playing this game today, maybe in the 25th overtime like Georgia Tech. But they never did, and Allen, I don't want to say they escaped because they got the win. They were leading most of that game there at the end there. But like I said, North Crowley switched up their whole play in the second half. He says, defense, handle your business. You make sure they don't get any kind of yardage on us. And Cornelius is just, man, that guy impressed me so much. A small size back, which is why he's got the UNLV offer, but elusive, great balance, and he can take hits and keep going. You know, I mean, 2 of his touchdown runs, one guy almost took his head off one time and still went 40, and the other guy hit him and he just bounced. His bounceability, I call it, but they can hit him. He flies over 5 yards the other way and then keeps going straight. I don't know where you go with that. I don't know how you can stop that kind of offense. And Quentin Gibson, is itching to get back in the action because nobody really talked about him this week. He likes to be talked about now. Going into this season, he's like, they don't know me. But now we know you, and he wants to be talked about.
Well, going to Colorado, he'll definitely be talked about there as long as prime time stays over there and doesn't take a different job or move on, especially since his talent is probably going to be going in the NFL. But, one thing I really just kind of one of those subtle statistics that you could see in the Allen Trinity game, I've kind of alluded to this, is Allen has a really good, rock solid defense, but they don't have those playmakers who can generate turnovers. You look at that game against Trinity, and there
Yeah,
were no turnovers in that game. So Allen, how are you going to generate turnovers against a team like North Crowley that's got playmakers on the offensive side of the ball? That's again one of those factors where I think Allen is going to struggle, and that's good. But that's going to be an X factor to where if we're coming back next week talking about how Allen won, I think we would be looking at the fact that a couple of their defensive players not only made good plays but finally generated turnovers. Because really, if you think about that North Crowley Coppell game, Coppell was driving 5 yards to get it to a one-score game.
mm-hmm.
What happened? Ball popped out, goes to the
Turnover.
end
Yeah,
zone. North Crowley. It's turnovers when you have these big names, and Allen so far has not generated turnovers. That they'll get an interception on you if you make a bad play. So Jemerson has got to keep that down. You talked about 2 of his 4 passes getting intercepted. You can't be doing that. But at the same time, when you're talking about the run game, that's when you're talking about generating turnovers.
yeah,
I worry about that with them.
that's a good point. You're probably going to ask me the same question that I'm going to ask my Houston co-host about this Duncanville Bridgeland game, where I'm going to ask him, "What can you tell me about Bridgeland that can give me any kind of confidence that they can win this game?" And I'm going to tell you the same thing he's going to tell me. I have nothing to tell you. I got nothing for you because I don't see it. You can't see it. I mean, the only thing you can hang your hand on is just time of possession and hope you don't get rolled out of there by just having 7-minute drives and that have to end in 7 and not 3. But I don't see it happening. I mean, we even seen DeCorian on defense. If you saw that one play that's been going around Twitter, he knocked the pants off that dude playing DB. He's probably getting his last licks in there because he's only got 3 more games where he's playing DB, and then that's a wrap for him. I don't see it. I mean, they got a great offensive line, but I don't know what they're going to do defensively against Duncanville.
Now, talk to me a little bit since you're a Houston guy. What would you say is the significance, if any, of the Woodlands hanging around in that game? The Woodlands, getting 20 in that game, actually able to get some offense against them and, keep that competitive for 48
Yeah.
minutes. Does that mean
See,
anything to you?
it means that the Woodlands is an offensive juggernaut and that they play great offense. They just don't play great defense. I don't think anybody would say Bridgeland is an offensive juggernaut. They like to just pound away at you behind those 2 big guys that are D1 guys and get at it. I think the Woodlands, they went to their aerial attack, which they do have. They have a great quarterback and all that kind of stuff. But that's all it tells me. It tells me that Duncanville just waited. I don't want to say playing with their food, but they knew they had that big strike ability, and they knew what the 2 guys that we talked to at the beginning were going to make something happen that wasn't going to let them lose, and that's exactly what happened at the end there. Bridgeland, they don't have the guys that can match up like that. They just don't have what it takes in the skill position to make the big plays to overcome what they're going to have to overcome with Duncanville.
But I mean, I think you mentioned time of possession, and really that's how they beat Waxahachie was just able in that fourth
Yeah,
quarter to keep the ball away from them and not give them that last opportunity when you had that crazy sequence when Bridgeland went up 12 and then Waxahachie got a kick return touchdown to make it within 5, but then they never saw the ball again because, again, Bridgeland and that ball control offense. But again, I don't think that's going to work against Duncanville and that defensive line. You got to be able to throw the ball to at least make them respect that. And I didn't see that, at least against Waxahachie, their ability to do that. I saw the ability to grind against a really good defensive line, which give them credit for being able to
right.
do that. But to handle a team like Duncanville, you got to be able to at least have the threat. And I don't see that with what I saw in that Bridgeland Waxahachie game.
Yeah, and they're not going to come from behind, so they need to stay ahead and be ahead and stay ahead. All these things are just seems like something you dream about if you're dreaming, but it's not. When reality, when the sun hits your face and wakes you up, it's just not going to happen. I wonder if it's ever going to happen for Atascocita. They've lost 9 in a row to North Shore now. It's becoming a thing, and this was the year they could do it, but they lost it in the last 20 seconds of the game, I believe, in the regular season. You'll throw your Ric Flair thing out there. They're so even. They both played close games and they both won close games. It just seems like North Shore has their number, and it's not going to change until it does change, and I don't see it changing this year, even though I've been a Tascasita guy all year long, but just seeing how they are playing so many close games down the stretch. And then the North Shore game from earlier this year when they just had that thing wrapped up and the guy makes a catch laying on his back, having it tipped 3 or 4 times. It just seems like everything stacks against them. Now, it would be wonderful to see, just because I like you said, new teams going through. And this is be a new team moving to the semifinals for sure. Obviously, we all know about Atascocita. They've been around for a while. But they have speed, but they're going to be matched up with North Shore speed. And speed on speed, it means you got to turn to the defenses. And the defensive secondary for North Shores is top notch. They can match up with anybody in this bracket that we have here in front of you. I think it's another North Shore win, but this is one I would love to see. I won't be seeing it because, as you noticed, as you've noted, I'll be at Church Bowl, so I won't be able to see that, Jimmy. Your thoughts on this one?
We got Lake Travis and Westlake at the end, and I think there's 2 tiers here. It kind of reminds me of North Crowley and Allen. You got the elite team against the really really good team who's been there in the past. I just think of how Westlake played Prosper and just kind of thumped them around in the second half, and Lake Travis struggled to beat Rockwall. So if you're trying to take this into Metroplex calibration, you got Lake Travis who had to hold on in the fourth quarter to beat a Rockwall team that was not competitive in the playoffs. And then you had a Westlake team that actually beat Prosper, who was competitive with Coppell among our elite teams. And I just think that Westlake should roll. And then Westlake against either North Shore or Tascasita will be what will determine our state champion title. But again, I would love to see a Tascasita there, but just the way that North Shore kind of ebbed and flowed with Katy, got up big on them, kind of pulled back, and then it just North Shore it's like a different playoff animal. The confidence, the comfortability of everybody there, whereas the Tascasita is going to have a couple of big unexpected things happen to finally pull that off.
Exactly. And remember, earlier this year, Tascasita has played Westlake and beat them on the road, so they at least know they can play with them. But getting past North Shore is another thing. They haven't proven they can do that. All right, let's move on to 6A Division II. Here's our 8 teams left in that deal. I try to tell you about Klein Collins. You don't know which team's going to show up, and they didn't show up against Longview, and now we got a DeSoto Longview game down at Baylor. Summer Creek has played Kingwood, it's a Tascasita that only beat them by a point. Summer Creek's going to handle Kingwood. I don't even know how much we need to talk on that game because I don't know how much we need to talk on any of the 4. It seems like the 4 teams could handle it. The top of the thing here, Guyer against Southlake, looks like the closest game. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this about Hebron, and that was one of those teams that I thought they had a chance to be competitive with Southlake, and they were. And you got to give them that credit for they got better. Hebron got better throughout the year, and I think you're really starting to see the trickle down effect of the problems with Southlake is that because their running game is so lax at times. Kenny Matthews kind of came up with this thought, a little bit of plagiarism here, that now because Southlake is having to throw the ball so much, that's extending the game 60, 70, 80 plays, which is exposing Southlake's defense to not being as good as they were in the past. They're better when they're only having to play 40, 50 plays, but now because of the way that these games are having to be played, Southlake is on the field more, their defense is on the field more, and now you're getting into these shootouts, which so far Southlake has won, but Denton Guyer is more of that. I think they look like against Crowley that they've taken that next step and they're getting better. They're finally leaning on. Sperry is finally playing at the level that we've expected him to play. Maybe the decommit recommit has kind of taken a weight off of his shoulder. So they're playing a lot more free. I would say in a different world, I would take Denton Guyer just based on the talent that is there. But given again, Southlake is now preparing and has had to try to figure out this new normal, and their offense has shown it can go play for play. And Denton Guyer has not showed me against an elite team. Sorry, Crowley, you're not an elite team. That they can play mistake-free football. So I got to give Carroll a little bit of an edge there. I think DeSoto is going to absolutely obliterate Longview. That might be very disrespectful, regardless of the weather in Waco, because I know some people are talking about the wind and the way the weather is going to come. And I know y'all are concerned about that in the Houston area. DeSoto can play, they can play
Yeah.
old school, just grind the ball out 70 times if we have to. And if you load the box too much, they can just do those little pop plays to the receivers who can go 70 yards on a 2 yard little pass pattern.
Hmm.
So DeSoto has so many options. And watching that game against Willis, I mean, talk about the ebbs and flows. Down 14, then they go on a 42-point run, and then Willis goes on a 20-point run. And DeSoto still won that game by 20 at the end
Yeah.
of the day. I think DeSoto is going to win this game by at least 3 scores. You got Summer Creek and Kingwood. Kingwood is a nice story. I thought straight Jesuit because of their running back might do a little bit of something, but at 23-6A, what can you say about them? And then you
Yeah.
got Vandegrift and Harlan. These are two teams that we didn't really expect to be there. Kind of thought Cibolo Steel would be that team. Vandegrift is going to be the team you're going to look at to come out of that bottom half. Carl Padilla sent me a funny tweet because he was like, Diggs, when would you ever put wrestling over high school football? And, I'd be like, well, if we're doing 6-man football, I think I would consider, going to a wrestling pay per view or something. But apparently the Cibolo Steel long snapper chose a wrestling meet
No.
over over the
Come on, man.
semifinals. So
Oh man.
what can you do
Just
sometimes? It's just one
if
of
you
those
live
things.
in if you live in Iowa, maybe that's the case. Or you're living in Texas, my boy. That doesn't happen here, man. You go to wrestling in Iowa, Wyoming. It does not happen here. That's wild to me. Interesting. Well, and also, I don't even know what kind of research we need to do. How many times are we in the fourth round of a playoff and both teams have home field advantage? Both teams get to play on their home field. That's what we have with Summer Creek and Kingwood, is they're both playing at Turner Stadium, their own home field, 4 weeks into the playoffs. I was going to say this about North Crowley, DeSoto. We'll talk about it with Argyle. December is the month for running and just establishing a running game. And Tiger Ryden has surely proven that he's, maybe he played the background for a little bit, but he's not doing it no more. He's getting 200 yards a week, 300 yards 2 weeks ago, broke the record over there. Like I said with Cornelius Warren, they just gave up on passing the second half of their game. They said, we're just going to run, see what you can do to stop us. Argyle runs with 2 or 3 guys now. We all know how they got to the state title that 1 year. Make my man Nick Ralston take it like 50 times, 50 times a game until his back was broken. They were done. They can't do no more with him. So yeah, DeSoto. It's the matchup of the nicknames too, right? Booby Feaster against Boosie Washington, or is it Boosie or Bootsy? Whatever it is, that's who we got here. And God help us if South Lake Carroll doesn't win, because Grandma Randa has been on Inside High School Sports' back the entire year. Boy, she's chirping like nobody's business about how the show's going downhill. We haven't had enough South Lake, as if I'm supposed to be out there when they're playing Keller Central or something like that. Just giving us the business week in and week out. Grandma Randa, please, we're trying. We'll be there. We're going to give you the best highlight. James Harris will be there. He'll have your boy on there throwing touchdowns, running for him, whatever happens. We'll have it. All right, you want to move on to 5A?
Move on to 5A.
Division 1. Division 1.
Shout out 6A Division 2 brought to you by Grandma Randa. Thank you for
Grandma
sponsoring.
Randa. Exactly. All right, we got a rematch. We got Ryan and Alito. We got Lone Star, Highland Park. A couple of Houston teams still alive in 5A Division 1, which I did not predict at the beginning of the season. I thought 5A Division 1 would be done with by round 4. They're not. And they'll be not done in round 5 either, apparently. And then we got Flower Bluff and the standby Smithson Valley down there in the Region 4. I think up here in Dallas, this might be the best game here, because Denton Ryan and Alito. I think that's over at Crowley ISD. Denton Ryan had a 27-8 lead and gave up all those points in the second half and couldn't score. They're itching to get a rematch here. Well, they got it, and they got a team that may not have Ray Guillory in there. Is that true?
Well, I'm hearing that he should play, that he could have played
Okay.
last week, but again, the injury reports, you never know. People doctor these things, because you want to get it out there, make them prepare for things. I've said this, and because of the tragedy and stuff at Denton Ryan, I haven't really continued to rail on this point at the end of the day. But now that I saw Denton Ryan against Richland and I got to watch it, I still think it's a mistake that Braden Mussett is not the starting quarterback, and I think that is what's going to come home to roost against Toledo because the long passing game against Richland, who's not known for their defense. I mean, they have a good defense, a serviceable 5A defense, but they just could not get the long game going at all. And for me, if you cannot get the long game going against Toledo, then they're going to stack the box, stop that run, and that's what they did in the second half effectively, and that's where they're going to win. Now, Denton Ryan has the coaching ability because they've got state championship coaches to create a game plan to figure out what with their personnel what is the best way to get the ball out in space, figure out how to extend the field vertically, and that's what they're going to have to do. But at least against Richland, they couldn't do it. So if they can't do it, they're not going to be able to do it against Toledo. So going into the game against Richland, I knew that Denton. I hope, I believe that Denton Ryan was going to win that game pretty comfortably, which they did. It was a 3-4 score game in the fourth quarter, a couple late touchdowns for window dressing. But I wanted to watch. Did I believe that Denton Ryan was going to be able to beat Toledo? And watching that game because of that inability to go deep, and we're going to say the same thing when we get to Lovejoy. I just don't have the confidence. But if they are able to beat Toledo, that's what's going to have to be fixed. That's what's going to be the difference. Whether it's Mussett and pop plays, or whether it's Hennigan and they find the ways to get one-on-one coverage, some busted plays, some crossing routes or something to get their kids in space. That is how the formula is to beat Aledo. Or Aledo goes back to Aledo last year and has 2 or 3 turnovers unexpectedly. But Aledo seems to have cleaned that up. We gave Robbie Jones some business last year about the turnovers, but this version of Aledo is playing elite level, very high technical football that I have come to expect from Aledo. We did not get that last year. We got the talent show. We got them looking pretty with all those D1 athletes. This version of Aledo is what I remember as Aledo, and that is such a hard team to stop. It's that Coach Buchanan hard, gritty fight, and I think that is why I'm going to be taking Aledo over Denton Ryan. But Denton Ryan is better athletically than Aledo, but Aledo seems to find these ways to win those kinds of games. So Denton Ryan, coaches, it's up to you. Create the game plan, get those receivers out in space so they got to pull away a linebacker to cover your guys because they got to respect that. And then you get to pound your 3 running backs, your Neo Warmates, and getting Braden Mussett on jet sweeps and having Hennigan run the ball. That's how you win. But against Richland, I don't see them. I didn't see them do it against Richland, so I can't see them doing it against Toledo.
Yeah, and Aledo's playing so well, it's really starting to anger their punter, who doesn't even get to step on the field except for warm-ups. Doesn't even get to punt anything. And then we got Highland Park and Lone Star. That's the story of two different observations from Pat Doney. He saw him in week 1 against Argyle, and then he saw him last week. Week 1, he didn't want to talk about Davian Gross at all. He's just like, I don't know. I mean, could he possibly be overrated? I'm not seeing it. In week 14, he wouldn't be quiet. I'm trying to cut my Houston stuff. You're not going to believe the stuff he was doing. He just looked like a man amongst boys. I said, boy, was he a boy amongst men last week? He's like, or in week 1, he just loves Davian Gross. But, man, they're going up against the Highland Park defense that, I mean, we talked about it last week. They did it to Reedy. I mean, they got a big on Reedy. He's like, watch out. Reedy can come back from 40. They didn't come back anywhere close from what they were down. You don't have to do much on offense when you have a defense like that.
You really don't. And I've got friends in the Frisco ISD metroplex sphere of trust, and every single one after they've seen Highland Park, because effectively Highland Park is going to have gotten through that 5-5A district because they're going to have to beat Lone Star, Reedy, and Wakeland to get out of there.
Yeah.
The Wakeland folks are like, there's no way that Reedy or Lone Star could beat the Highland Park that they saw. Now all the Reedy people who have watched them are like, yeah, Lone Star has no chance. I mean, just that defense is so stifling. And Lone Star struggled with Midlothian, and Midlothian is a very young team. They're about a year or 2 away. I gave the metaphor on Twitter that I think that Midlothian is what Richland is this year. A team that is going to be 2 or 3, is going to be a top 5 team, and it's going to be better and is going to be dangerous. They're just a year away. I think we're going to see that. When we're talking about the campfire next year, it's going to be Midlothian as that team instead of Richland. Richland's going to take a step back. But Lone Star, even if they can go score for Highland Park for a little bit, their defense, I mean, Highland Park's offense, which is not that elite, is going to be able to score whatever they
Yeah.
want to on Lone Star. So Highland Park's just going to need a couple of stops. And with that defense, that's a very high probability. I think Highland Park is going to win this game pretty comfortably.
That's I like that observation. The next game is Angleton and LaPorte. It's another rematch. LaPorte gave Angleton their only loss of the season, beat it by a touchdown. LaPorte took their lumps in the non-district. They lost all of them. They played P&G. They played some other high-powered teams. You know, they haven't played on their home field at all this year because it's still under reconstruction. And so when their Bulldog faithful want to see them, they got to hit the road. So they're always gassing up their cars. At least they don't have to gas it up too much for this one. They're going down to NRG to see this rematch. Angleton won in the last seconds last week, last minute of the game. Nice little throwback pass, kind of reminded me of how Solana used to do it, roll everybody right, throw back the other way. The DB for College Station was completely lost on the play. He was looking around as the ball goes right by his head. It would have been an easy bat down if he knew where he was. He didn't, so they scored, and Angleton moves on. That wing T offense for LaPorte is very confusing for a lot of defenses, but maybe it won't be for Angleton seeing it a second time. Maybe they make some adjustments this time. I expect this thing to be close, and I'm actually going to pick Angleton in this one, which I know my counterpart was laugh at me. And this is LaPorte's the furthest I thought would go in 5A Division I, but again, I thought all that was last week and it was be shut down in Houston, but they're still going. I'm going to pick Angleton this one, but I think it's going to be super close. Your thoughts on the little Flower Bluff?
I'm going to tell a pointless story is what I'm going to do because we're talking about Houston football, and you know how much I know about Houston
Yes,
football. But as you know, Ward, I love professional wrestling. I love, I hit an RKO on you and Melissa.
you
I
did. You're right.
love the pageantry of it. And one of my favorite signs was back in the 90s, back when Raw and Nitro were all fighting, everybody brought their signs and you had to try to be creative with signs. And even though this is such an innocuous sign, I still remember it today and it makes me smile. But somebody created a sign that says, when it's cold, don't forget La Parca. La Parca was a Hispanic luchador wrestler, and it's just kind of taking his name La Parca and turning it into a sign. And so when I see Laporte, I always think of that. Laporte, La Parca, it's very similar kind of a things. And Laporte helped Angleton show College Station Laporte this past week, and sent both of them out there. I think if we would have been predicting this side of the bracket, we would have picked an A&M Consolidated College Station
Yeah,
regional final,
absolutely.
but Laporte decided to show College Station Laporte. But man, that what they have done is impressive. And every time I want to pick against Laporte, I'm 0-2 my last 2 weeks picking against them. So I think at some point I'm going to have to stop picking against them. When you want to win a pick'em champion, don't pick Laporte. That's going to be my or don't pick against Laporte. It's going to be my
take
sign
that
for
to
the week.
take
Smithson
that to
Valley is
college
by
campus.
far the better team in the Southern Region 4 thing. I think Smithson Valley should be considered a favorite. Flower Buff is a good team. I'm not dismissing that from being the case, but I think Smithson Valley should take care of business. It's like what we see when we see a Converse Judson against a team from Corpus, even if it's good or a Valley team, you got to go with Converse Judson. You got to go with Smithson Valley in this
Yeah.
case.
And when we look at this bracket, I think we both agree that Aledo Highland Park would be the de facto state championship game. I just can't see anything on the lower side that could beat them. But that's why they play the games. Although they're getting that game at 11 a.m., the state title game. So maybe it'd be off people's
Never know when they'll
radars.
get
But
a
wake up.
safety on the first play of the game or early in the game, get up 2-0 on you.
That's true. That is true. All right, Division Two. Here's our bracket for 5A Division Two, our Elite Eight. Obviously, the eyes go to the second matchup. Let's talk about that one first. South Oak Cliff, Port Neches Groves. Uh, that thing is it's going to be played at Stephen F. Austin, even though they didn't really want to play it there. They had a whole bunch of different options. I think it ends up being option 2 or 3. But it's the matchup everybody's been talking about. You want to see it again in the final. We're not. We're going to at least get to see it. Your thoughts on this thing?
I mean, Port Neches Grove beating Texas High was an upset, and Texas
Yeah,
High was up a good majority of that game. And then, what we talked about with North Shore and some of these legacy teams that just when you have that experience and you've been there, and now you got Texas High, who's kind of the Atascocita, the new dog, trying to play all these crazy non-district schedules, trying to get in your Westlakes and playing everybody you can. And you had Texas High playing like Argyle Liberty Christian and just all kinds of like who can we play to get better because because the playoff experience isn't going to be there. Port Neches Grove just leaned into that, leaned into their strength, leaned into that offensive line, leaned into the running game, leaned into the coaching and understood the assignment. And in the fourth quarter, they didn't panic and they took care of business. But South Oak Cliff has been rolling through,
yeah,
these 8-5A teams. And the way they're doing it, it's like every aspect is clicking right now for South Oak Cliff. The offensive line is bullying the defensive line. The run game is doing great. When Kopecky needs to go back and throw the ball, his vision downfield is great. The defense is playing lights out. We've been seeing single numbers across the board. South Oak Cliff on the road
yeah.
because they played Longview and have kind of gotten that road. We talked. Coach Todd was talking about playing chess earlier, and playing chess in non-district, going to North Shore and Longview has got them ready for this game. They're ready for it. They take care of business. They finally avenge. They go up 2-1 in their best of seven series. 2-1.
You talk about their defense. If you want some stats behind that, last 10 games, they've averaged 3.5 points given up. I mean, that's a little more than a field goal. Now, granted, a lot of it against some GISD teams, but even the big dogs here in the playoffs, they've given up 7, 14, 7. It's they're not giving up points. The defense is what's going to hold them straight here, and I think you're right on that one. I think they beat P&G. Then they go on to play either Lovejoy or Argyle. We saw both of these teams last week. We talked about Lovejoy. I called Coach Rogers this morning because I wanted to talk about their special teams because the special teams was a major factor which got them up so big because they kept getting possessions for them. Everybody does the pooch kick, and I was like, your pooch kick seemed a little bit different because the ball it goes a little bit higher, it goes a little bit shorter, and by the time Walnut Grove receivers are ready to grab it, there's 4 guys right in their face, and they don't know whether they should, they don't know what to do. It's a high school kid. You're a little fearful, and they fumbled twice, and I was like, well, you must really practice on it. He's like, I got to be honest. We covered kicks so poorly the last couple of weeks. We just started pooch kicking. We haven't worked on it all that much. I was like, oh, well, never mind. Then I guess I didn't see anything. Forget me. What I did see was a powerful running back, running game, and the way they counter tray it back the other way, and they misdirection it. Very wing T-ish, but it's not really a wing T. It's going all kinds of different directions, and Watson Bellows did a great job there in the first half. Your thoughts against a Lovejoy team that likes to air that thing out? They have a 1,000-yard rusher on Lovejoy, but I only noticed it on one play because the rest of it they were throwing it around a lot.
Yeah, Ben Adams has been fantastic. And Ben Adams, you talked about kind of Davian Gross from week 1 to week 14. Ben Adams has
Yeah,
made that same kind of glow up. He has been fantastic. Lovejoy's offensive line, even though they're not, D1 recruit heavy, has played great as a unit. That offensive line coach, salute, because you have got that unit playing excellent football. The defense is like I said, tackling hard because they're not very big. They're a little bit undersized on the defensive side of the ball, but they're playing with their heads on fire effectively. Lovejoy has kind of maximized what their lot in life is, but Argyle looks a lot like Lovejoy, except a little bit bigger, a little bit faster, a little bit stronger across almost all the positions. I think if you started going from, other than Dalen McCutcheon, I think if you started going 1 to 22 and started doing pick 'em, you're probably going to pick mostly Argyle players. And I
yeah,
think that's that depth that Argyle is going to have is going to lead them to take care of Lovejoy. Now, Lovejoy is going to find something. They're going to exploit something. But Argyle's offensive line is so good. And the thing that kind of is, I talked about it with Allen. If Lovejoy has to go to the air, it didn't look good against Anna at all. It was very skeptical. It was very, like if you get a, their receivers were doing it. It's like the big chunk plays were going from the receivers and not
mm-hmm,
because of the quarterback. So if you're
mm-hmm.
trying to go down, it's got to be a blown play. If you're trying to go down the field, it's got to be blown. It's got to be a blown play. And Argyle's not going to make those mistakes. I think in just about every aspect of the game, Argyle is ahead and has an advantage. So Argyle should win this game comfortably. I'd say 2 to 3 scores.
And I think I texted you this. I think McCutcheon, by my count, watching the game, only got 3 targets. Now,
Right.
granted, Anna has the Zay Gentry there shutting them down, but Argyle's guys got some guys out there shutting receivers down as well, so they got to go somewhere else. You go down the lower half, you got Randall and Iowa Colony, another rematch. Randall really handled them the first time they played, but Randall's handling everybody, Diggs. I'm so looking for them to be in this championship game. Boy, if we did this podcast in Region 4, I don't know how depressed would we be? Because it seems like to us, and obviously we're DFW guys, such an afterthought to even think about Region 4. But it's true. I mean, if they had a powerhouse in there, if they had a Richmond Randall in there, we'd be talking about them, nonstop. We might not know as much about them, but we're like, okay, they got the pedigree, but we're kind of nonchalant them. I do think this Iowa Colony Richmond Randall game will be a little closer than the first time they played. Another 2 teams that were a little bit scared of the rain on Friday and moved it to Saturday night, even though they're going to play their state title game in a Friday night game. They're still moving it to Saturday. Rain is making them fearful. I don't know why rain will make Randall fearful, because that man Landon Williams-Callis, he ain't throwing the ball. He's just going to grab it and get going. The speed that kid has is unbelievable. But Iowa Colony does have a good, and I expect this game to be a lot closer. But I just see Randall on a mission here to get to state title game.
I had a West Texas coach. I'm not going to name him, but I had a West Texas coach send me a message, and he was kind of breaking down post and shallow water and some of the smaller school situations. And he was like, "Diggs, this is a little bit, but I talked to some people, booked this. Richmond Randall's going to win state." Like, came out of nowhere. He's like talking about West Texas stuff, and then all of a sudden he's like, "Diggs, book this fact. Richmond Randall is going to win state." Taking from his perspective, like, what is on Richmond Randall's pedigree that would make a coach think this is a team that could win state over a South Oak Cliff or Port Neches Grove who has been there so much?
Yeah. Well, obviously they're new schools, so they're pulling guys from some of the powerhouses around them, like Shadow Creek and all them type players. They got a big defensive player named Chance Sims, who's a sack machine, just as big as anybody you'd see on South Oak Cliff's defensive line. So their defense is tight, and their running game is, obviously, as I've been talking throughout this whole podcast, running game is a lot better than South Oak Cliff's running game this year by leaps and bounds. But I'm not sitting here saying that they're going to win that game. I'm saying they're going to make a beeline to that game. That game against South Oak Cliff, if it happens, because I'm not counting Argyle out quite yet, they lost a Fog Bowl game to them, I believe, 2 years ago? But that game would be something different. If South Oak Cliff can get their arms around this kid's legs, because he's a smaller back, but if they can slow him down, Landon Williams-Callis, who we'll be talking about the next 2 years on this podcast, I'm sure, then they stand a chance here. But Randall's defense is very good. They're not an underrated defense as well. They got players over there as well.
And I like.
I don't know what you could say about Bernie.
By the way, Bernie, the Greyhounds. I know we've seen them we've seen them make some runs out of Region 4 and then steal a state semifinal game. Corpus Christi Miller just looks like probably one of the better teams out of Corpus Christi in a while. So I'm going to take Miller to lose to whatever team comes out of Houston. I don't think we're going to see a Corpus Christi team in the state championship. But Richmond Randall is definitely being on my radar. I remember you talking about them last year and you being excited about them. I'm like, I've never heard of this team, so I had a hard time picking them in these pick'em things. But they just kept winning and finding ways to win. So that was a very valuable playoff experience, which I think is going to be productive for this run right now.
Absolutely. The only time we've had Corpus Christi Miller on our air, but they're getting the pants beat off them by DeSoto, 57-21. So that's apples to oranges there. You can't really compare nothing. 4A Division I, buddy boy. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the matchup that we've been hoping to see. Is still on the board here. Stephenville Salinas. Salinas taking on Alvarado over at Mustang Panther. Don't expect that to be close. This may be the first year we've had Alvarado on our air 3 times, but we have. This will be the 3rd time that they'll be on here, and they won the other 2, so Alvarado's happy to see us. I don't know if they'll be happy after this one. That's a 7:30 game, and talk about Stephenville against West Plains. Can Stephenville take out West Plains and get this matchup that I've been looking for since week 1?
West Plains is going to push them. We talked about that last week. That West Plains has shown me enough, and Stephenville didn't play Canyon Randall well enough to make me really confident. Oh, it wasn't Randall; it was whoever they played in the second week. They didn't play them well enough to make me think, okay, Stephenville is a prohibitive favorite. So Stephenville, I think, is the favorite in this game, but I only got this game as a 7 to 14 point kind of a margin. Therefore, West Plains certainly is not going to have to do too much to overcome that in a crazy scenario. I think Salina is going to beat Alvarado big. And I mean, Cartier Collier is a nice player, but again, they struggled with Panther Creek. They struggled with Sulphur Springs. Salina was beating them by 4 or 5 scores. So
Yeah.
even though Salina had that second half meltdown against Argyle, where Argyle or Aubrey, where they had that second
Auburn.
half gave up 42 points, I still think Salina's offense is going to be good enough. Alvarado, it may be a punch, 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 but then Salina's going to keep punching when Alvarado is going to be making mistakes. Alvarado has so many two-way players, and you saw them gassed against Panther Creek before that kind of crazy fourth quarter comeback. Salina, I think, is going to take care of business in that game. So I do think we're going to get Salina, Stephenville in the top half of the bracket. And then Ward, I know you're a big fan of geography. Where do you think you would put a Tyler versus Kilgore game? Like, where do you think the middle of Tyler and Kilgore might be? Or Tyler and Longview. I know you like big things. If you had Tyler and Longview playing each other, where do you think you'd put that game? Maybe in
Somewhere sweet.
Shreveport?
Yeah, let's throw it in Louisiana. What in
Or
the world?
Forney?
Forney.
Tyler,
Bring it to Forney.
bring
Bring
it
it
to
to
Forney.
Forney. I'm all
Jeff
for that.
Fleener must have done a great sales job to be like, come on over to City Bank. Not even our new stadium in North Forney. Come on
No.
over to City Bank. We'll take care of you.
Are you going to go to it? No. No, I got no interest. Hey, I got a Houston team left, but it's in Region 4. Bay City, the Black Cats. Black Cats with Alex Estrada behind center and Jordan Andrews, the big powerlifting running back. They had in the Houston podcast we talked about before the season started. Getting flown over into Region 4 was quite a coup for them because they have such an easier road, and I think they beat Lavernia, and then they, as I call it in our Houston one, Debo's coming, which is East Texas. Debo's coming to cause some trouble in the next round, but I think Bay City wins this game. They're playing that one in Bastrop, so that should be an interesting thing. The Black Cats are playing some football.
Lavernia, again, not knowing much about Lavernia, that's like my La Porte story kind of a thing. Got these Lavernia teams beating Austin LBJ obviously gets on my attention because we've seen
Yeah.
Austin LBJ the last couple of years make some really good runs. I got to watch them play Tyler Chapel Hill. I mean, just in person. So and they're very young. So for Lavernia to win that game definitely catches my attention. Bay City is a little bit of a computer favorite, so I'll probably go when I don't know about the teams, go with what the computer is saying. Kilgore's already beat Chapel Hill pretty big earlier in the year, so I think Kilgore is going to take care of business there. I mean, Chapel Hill made it to the state finals, so you can't count them out. I feel like maybe even last year, my East Texas friends are going to roll their eyes, but I think Kilgore beat Chapel Hill big in the regular season, and then Chapel Hill was able to avenge it in the regional finals when they played each other again. I'll have to check that while I have you talk at some point. But I think you can't ever count out Chapel Hill. But I'm going to take Kilgore as well. So I think we're going to have Bay City and Kilgore and Salina and Stephenville as our final four.
And we talked about running game works in December. Nobody's running the ball better right now than Salina, and they're the fast, quick running backs. They should have a field day running up. That might be a quick game against Alvarado. They might be running like crazy in the joint. All right, 4A Division 2, unless you found your information, which I don't think you have. You don't work that fast on the internet. The dude's like somebody from the 80s. He doesn't know what he's doing.
They beat him 21-19 in 2023 in the playoffs.
Doesn't sound like a blowout.
Well, not a blowout, but when they played in the regular season, we had Kilgore beat them 39-16. So there you
go. There's your blowout. All right, 4A Division 2. Here's our Elite 8 here. Another rematch, Brock and Graham. Boy, it's got to be better than the first one, that's for sure. Van took care of our Sunnyvale squad. Now they get Carthage as a reward. Sealy, a third seed out of their district. But we should only let 2 teams in the playoffs, Diggs. Why are we letting so many teams in the playoffs? I don't understand. Why are we going for? Okay, so they're still playing against Waco La Vega. I think the buck may stop here, and then Wimberley, who we've seen at AT&T Stadium a lot, taking on Sinton. Let's go back up to Brock Graham. Is there any way this thing can get closer than the last time they played? Are we diving through film on a Sunday night, figuring out where we went wrong?
I think it's going to get a little bit better. The fact that Glenn Rose was able to find some things against Graham and it gives me a little bit of optimism that maybe Brock would be able to do that, but I'm still going to take Graham. I don't think they're going to win by as much, but I think they'll take care of business. Carthage is just dominant. A Carthage Graham game that could be like a star special next Friday. That seems to be the kind of. But then again, I think maybe Coach Surratt every time they go to the Star, crazy things happen. So he may not want to try to do that again. But I think Carthage will be a big favorite there. La Vega, remember that district La Vega was in? We
Yeah.
were ranking them in the Metroplex with Stephenville and China
Yep.
Spring and all that. And now that, like you talked about with Bay City getting to move brackets, they get to move to the other half to where they're avoiding all the DFW schools until instead the state championship. I think that's going to benefit them as well. Sinton is a scary good team. The way they beat Lago Vista, I think I'm going to take them to upset Wimberley because Wimberley has been there. Wimberley has been that North Shore team that's been there, but I think Sinton is that much better to where I can trust Sinton to pull off a little bit of an upset in name wise. I think if you just put their names out there, Wimberley and Sinton, who are you going to take? I think most people around the state are going to be like, oh, I've heard of Wimberley, but
Right.
Sinton showed me a little something. So I like Sinton on the bottom half of the bracket. But I think this is now Carthage. This is the Carthage region, as it were.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's Carthage's game, and we're just all watching it.
We're all just watching. I can't ever say this without thinking of that other podcast where one of the guys kept calling them cartilage, like the knee cartilage in your knee, and the other people on the podcast just let it happen or just dying laughing in the back. Oh, cartilage, huh? Well, when are they going to play tendon? Patella tendon? They got to play the tendons? Anyway, moving on to 3A Division 1. I don't see any DFW teams on here, but I know you do. My eyes go to Columbus Franklin, which is at the time we're doing this game. It's the only game left that doesn't have a date or location. We're still working on that. Probably going to do a coin flip on Monday morning or some sort. And then old Aunt Edna down there is a Houston squad. Aunt Edna still playing. See if they can push through and get to the next round. Well, I like that Columbus Franklin. Franklin's got the name. Columbus has got the players. Well, Franklin got the players too. I've been sticking with Columbus the whole time. There's teams I've stuck with this whole time. Randall, Salina, and Columbus is the other one. So I'm picking Columbus in this one to keep going with the Schobel boys out at the helm. With TCU players, too, for everybody in this DFW podcast. Two TCU commits are on that squad. Their quarterback, Adam Schobel, and their linebacker, John Schobel. So you guys should be rooting for them so you can see them at AT&T. You tell me about the top half.
About the
Go
family.
ahead.
You're talking about grandmas. You talked about Grandma Edna and Grandma Renda. Now
That's
you're
old
talking
Aunt
about
Edna.
the brothers over in Columbus. Is this a statewide podcast now? We're talking about Christopher Columbus and Aunt Edna and Grandma Edna and
Old Aunt Edna.
Yano Estacado and whatnot. And then you don't even recognize our two DFW area teams in Paradise and Malakoff, which are clear Wise County and Henderson County in our television market.
Can't
Look
see
it up.
Malakoff. I can't see him on the DFW map. All right. Anyway, what do you think about the top half of the non-DFW teams playing each other?
I picked Paradise to beat Jim Ned, but I think Shallow Water is where it ends. Malakoff should beat Liberty Ilo. Liberty Ilo took out Winsboro. We had Malakoff and Winsboro 1 and 2 in our 3A rankings all year. So I think credit to Liberty Ilo. They got it big, and Winsboro tried to come back, but just fell a little bit short, 56-49. Columbus Franklin, I'll defer to you. I know you need Columbus to win for the Houston show.
I think it'll be a tight game. So that's a coin toss game right there, which is
And
why
then
they're
I'll take Edna big over Lano, Lano, whatever you want to call it. I know everybody in the Texas football media mafia is sweet on Lano because Ashley Pickle is a famous Lano graduate, like kind of like everybody kind of galvanizes around Plano East, but Aunt Edna having none of that. So
old Aunt Edna. She can come out with that sweet cornbread and knock them over the head with it. All right, 3A Division 2. We got Canadian against Wall. Gunter is a Thursday night special. Boy, I love seeing Thursday night games on as we come into week 4 of the playoffs because there's only a couple, 2, 3, there's small pickings, but they're playing Holiday, and then we got Woodville against Dangerfield, Tidehaven, a Houston squad taking on Lexington. You know, Tidehaven was a defending state runner-up from last year, but the only guy that was doing anything for her last year graduated, went to Baylor. Their running back. They still reloaded, and they're still playing some football. I got them beating Lexington. Your thoughts on Gunter Holiday?
Is Aunt Edna going down the Holiday Road?
Holiday. Oh, I'm not going to sing that, but that's a
Man,
good one. Way to stick with the theme, buddy boy.
that's what we do here. We do wrestling and 80s movies. It's how it happens. Man, like WrestleMania, like I made this tweet and our friend Jason De La Rosa corrected me because that's what he does. He's my producer because you won't stay up late. He'll be my Texoma. Texoma's not real producer. I said, are we really going to get Canadian Gunter 10? And he was like, Diggs, I know it feels like 10, but it's really 8 coming up. 8 straight years of a regional final or a regional state semifinal. Canadian Gunter, like tired of it. I'm tired of it. And we're gonna get it
You would,
again.
you would
We're gonna
think at
get it
some
again.
point, one of the schools would get more students or less students over the years and drop them down a class or up a class. But nope, still playing ball. Gunter's gonna have no problem with Holiday, huh?
You remember WrestleMania 8?
Yeah, no.
You don't remember
No,
WrestleMania 8?
I
That
don't know
was
numbers that well.
WrestleMania at Caesar's Palace where they would like come in on elephants and whatnot, and you
Oh,
had
okay.
Hulk Hogan beat like Yokozuna after Yokozuna beat Bret Hart. I mean, we're getting to the point where we're just recycling things. You had the glory days. This is not Andre versus Hulk Hogan. Now we got Hulk Hogan coming in and winning getting a championship in an untelevised match. That's what we should have. We should have Anna come back because they're out of the playoffs. Take Gunter out and say, okay, we're dropping to 3A Division 2. We're going to take Gunter over and then have Anna somehow win 3A Division 2. That's the storyline we need out of this. Instead of Gunter
Take him out
Canadian.
behind this. Take him out behind the scenes. What's going on backstage? It's Anna back there beating somebody's butt. And
But
now
see
we
what I'm
got Hulk
excited
Hogan
about
versus.
Dangerfield, Ward, because they
You
beat
like
New
Dangerfield?
Diana. New Diana was my hipster pick to get out of there. And then the way they beat Newton last week, I mean, Newton was, a big favorite on the computer models. And I was like, if Dangerfield could beat New Diana, they can beat Newton, and they did. Dangerfield is playing hot right now. Kind of think about Gilmer Harmony from a couple of years ago. I think we may see Dangerfield at AT&T. So Dangerfield is kind of that team you got to keep an eye on. They're playing great.
Danger. All right. Well, let's take a look at Class 2A, Division 1. Tell me what you know about. I know your Honeygrove team's in this bracket. You've been adopting them since you cast off Toller. Now you got Honeygrove
Cast off
playing against
Toller. I
Hakeem.
needed a 2A Division 1 team because Toller cast me off going up to 3A Division
Uh,
2. I didn't leave them. They left me, Ward. They left me.
how dare, how
Be
dare
clear.
they grow as a population?
Right.
How dare they grow as a
Send
population
some
in the
kids to an
community? They should
alternative
have kept
school.
it
That's
down.
what you got to do.
All right, give me your hipster picks in these Elite 8 here in Division 2, Division 1.
NATO is probably right now the best team in Division One. Because they already beat Refugio, and if you beat Refugio, you're probably pretty good. Honeygrove should win over Joaquin. Joaquin is one of those teams. They're 9-4. They've had some games where you're like, what is up with this team? But then they beat teams that they're not supposed to beat. So this is going to be a very dangerous game for Honeygrove. And you know who called me? The UIL called me and said, Diggs, we're going to put Honeygrove and Joaquin in your backyard. Go call it for the UIL. So I'm going to go
We
call it
need
for
you,
the
Diggs.
UIL. We need you, Diggs. So I'm going to go call it for the UIL. I'm going to be your color commentator for that game.
That's
And I like Honeygrove to take care of business. Hamilton versus Axtell is bad football at the end of the day. Hamilton should win. Stanford should win. But I think whoever is coming out of Region 3 and Region 4 is going to be your favorite. But I'm cheering for Honeygrove. We need to get Honeygrove to the state championship to right the wrong that Toller let me down last year with Timpson and losing to Timpson. Now we got to bring in Honeygrove to take care of business for Diggsy.
Diggsy. That's a big deal for you, Diggs. I hope you do the same preparation you do. Well, I'm assuming you will. You do for everything that you do. I'm sure you're going to be completely prepared. But have some little behind-the-scenes story. That's little Tommy Toller here is one of the best little defensive backs, and he also has a lemonade stand on the weekend. Give him some of
Grandma
that.
Linda.
Yeah, Grandma Randa's coming around. Ganado, by the way, beat the pants off of Tidehaven earlier this year, 42-6. So that's just to let you know how good they are. That's a 3A Division II team that's still in the playoffs, and they couldn't even hold their water against. And it wasn't week 1 either; it's week 4. So they'd already gotten their stuff going there. All right, last one, 2A Division II. I'm putting you on the ropes here. Talk to me. Get it with ropes. Talk to me about Collinsville and Munster. We were going to have it as our Country Roads game of the week, but my man Neil can't get all the way up to Denison in time. He got a day job. He wouldn't make it in time. You promised me it would be in Denton. You promised me. I wanted some sauerkraut from my man Neil. Tell me about that game because that's the one that catches my eye in this bracket.
Yeah, they've already played it though, Ward. It's kind of, we're talking about these district rematches and games we've already seen, and Munster took care of business, and I think they're going to take care of business again. Beating Albany was really that springboard for them. Once you beat the defending state champions and you beat a team that has been there, Albany is kind of one of those teams that you see at AT&T over the last 7 to 10 years, and beating them convincingly. I think this is now Munster's state championship to lose. I think they're going to go all the way to AT&T and bring us home another DFW state championship. We could have it all the way up. Carthage, I think 3A, 4A Division II, we don't have any. But maybe we could adopt Graham or something. I don't know. Graham is fringe, but DFW district at least. But Junction is a very fun story. I was having some old coaches tell me that their coach was an old Whitewright guy from North Texas. So he's doing great over there, and he follows me on Twitter. I checked that out. We're not going to go through all of the. We got another week before we do all the random schools. Did they follow Diggs on Twitter? But I'll tell you, the Junction coach does. That's my guy, and I like Bremond in Region 3. So I like Groover Ropes. I don't know anything about, but I'll take Munster. I'll take Bremen. And I'm going to take Junction over Shiner. I think Junction is going to take care of business. But, man, I'm excited to see Munster get a state championship. I don't even remember the last time we've had a 2A Division II DFW state champion.
Well, they were in the title game. They were in the title game a couple years ago. They didn't win it.
They were in Division I at that point.
Okay. So we haven't had a 2A Division II one in a while. I got you. Good point. By the way, a little tidbit in my life, the word ropes. I'm going to root for ropes because when I was having twins, I wanted to name one of them Cassell Ropes Fasold. And obviously my wife at the time shut that down quickly. I said, well, can we at least keep the word ropes as a middle name? I like that name. And she said, I'm on the verge of showing you what the 5 figures said to the face. And I was like, all right, we'll go with Max and Dean, which turned out to be a good choice for them. But it would be sweet if they had the middle name Ropes, I think. But anyway, I'm rooting for Ropes just for my kid's name that never did happen. Anyway,
Ropes,
that's a wrap. Ropes. All right, buddy, that's it for this one. We did it again because we don't talk that 6-man. We don't know nothing about it or church ball.
Regional finals. We've survived all the way. We got state semifinals, and all you're going to do is hear me complain next week about, well, I'm tired of seeing all these teams, Aledo, South Oak Cliff, DeSoto, Duncanville. Every year.
And all of a sudden you're going to turn country on us too, apparently, according to that voice you just did. Let me hear that country voice again. I'm tired of seeing
Aledo and Duncanville and DeSoto and South Oak Cliff and Carthage and Gunner. See them every week. Canadian every year. Tired of them.
I done seen it for the last time. All right, Diggs. All right, Grandma Randa. Mr. Stafford.
Now, it would not be a show if I didn't point out that at Thanksgiving Hoop Fest last week in Duncanville, Plano East beat
DJ Hall played boy.
Nationally ranked Moore, Oklahoma, who beat Lancaster, defending 5A state champion, just before they lost to Plano East.
DJ Hall had a hell of a game too. When we turned the corner to bet, they wore him down. Man, all right, I'm looking forward to basketball, but not yet. Not yet, just like Gladiator.
I'm looking forward to basketball. It's all I got left, Ward, because I've seen Aledo and Smithson Valley play. I've seen Duncanville and North play. I've seen Canadian and Gunner play. Seen it all.
But have you seen Randall and South Oak Cliff? You have not seen it.
I've not seen Harlan and Vandegrift either, so,
Have you seen North Crowley and Atascocita? No, you haven't. Oh my God, we got some games for
Always
you.
possible. Not likely,
All right,
but always.
All right, Diggs, I'm out of here, guy. Go change your country voice back to normal and do some honey growth. I'm out of here. All right.